Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm George Thorman. I'd like to welcome you again to another program of local history. I don't think we've been on for the last few minutes. I'd like to welcome you again to a program of local history. My guests this evening are two young gentlemen, Stephen Peters and Joey Peters. They're not on the screen there. There they are. Stephen is on my left there, and Joey is the one in the middle. They're bottle collectors, and because they're bottle collectors and digging all over the old dumps in St. Thomas, they've become historians as well. They're probably the two youngest historians in St. Thomas. We had them talk to us at the Historical Society a short while ago, and everybody was very impressed with their knowledge and the research that they've done to find the history of some of these bottles that you'll see on the table. Stephen and his brother put together a directory list of early bottlers in St. Thomas, early brewers, and early druggists. Now, Stephen, which do you want to start with?
Well, we might as well start with, and in the order that they go, we start with the druggists, they start with druggists.
You want to start with druggists?
We'll start with druggists, and then
all right.
We'll go from there.
But before we perhaps start with the early druggists, which is the earliest one that we have in St. Thomas that's mentioned?
Well, do you mean like the earliest druggist that we have is Charles Rolls?
Yeah.
That was in 1832. If you wanted like the earliest bottle that is known from St. Thomas, that would be from the Rich and Mitchell.
No, I think we'll just leave that for a minute. I think we better establish first that the early druggists and bottlers and brewers we only know through advertisements in newspapers,
right,
or very early directories. And when did they start putting their names on bottles, roughly?
Well, bottles, like American bottles are a lot earlier. The American bottles could be the early 1820s, even earlier than that. That names have been embossed on bottles, and in Canada it would have been around the 1840s, early 1850s that names had been started that they had been embossed on the bottles.
Well, could we perhaps explain to the people first, take one of your St. Thomas bottles there, the druggist bottles, and explain to them how the name is put on, what the procedure was.
Okay, well,
take the easiest.
I'm just gonna, the easiest one here would be this Truman Duncombe. A lot of the people, like the Duncombe name in St. Thomas is big, like everybody's heard of it from the museum and that. The bottle, first of all, it started glass. The glass is made with sand, and that's heated with other compounds, and so that's heated and it's formed in a pot, and the bottle, there's a mold made, a special mold, and a lot of different companies would have the mold or the same bottle shape as this, but each of them had a different nameplate put on. It's called a slug plate. So the bottle, the glob of glass is put into the mold, and the glass is blowing. It's blowing just like you would blow bubble gum into just blowing a bubble. And the shape as you blow through the blowpipe, it expands in the mold, and the shape of the bottle's taken.
I just asked you a question there, man. So they have a mold for those bottles. Is that a wooden mold, or?
The early molds were wooden. Then after that, like wood wouldn't last long because of the hot, like glass and that. It wouldn't. It deteriorated too quickly, so they started into metal molds, and then that's usually what they had been made from, or made in, was metal molds.
Well, if I were a druggist in St. Thomas, that's what, Truman Duncombe?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to have my own bottles. Then I write to this firm in the States.
Well, it could, like a lot of the druggists were made in the States, but there was Canadian glass houses in Hamilton would have been the biggest one that a lot of them could have been made, but a company in Toronto, druggist ware was their specialty. That was the Beaver Flint Glass Company,
Are they the ones that made the beaver jars?
No, the beaver fruit jars, they're made in Kingsville, Ontario at the Ontario Glass Company.
Oh, I see.
They were in business from, 1898 to 1902. But the beaver flint glass, they produced a lot of this. The druggists wear it, the druggist bottles. And so, say Truman Duncombe, for example, he would write to them or come in contact. They may have had like salesmen go around to the different towns, and he would say that he wants maybe one gross of bottles, 144 bottles or something, and say that he wants so many with this nameplate. So he would ask for that many, and then if he wanted to reorder, it could be done. Like they'd keep the plate. They wouldn't destroy the slug plate because they could use it again.
What was that slug plate made of? Metal?
It was metal. It was just in the bottle mold. There was a recession, and the plate just slipped into place, and you could. The plates were interchangeable, so a different druggist could, from London or something, could have exactly the same bottle, but just his name on it.
Yeah. Well, when was Truman Duncombe a druggist in St. Thomas?
Well, Truman Duncombe, he wasn't really a druggist in St. Thomas. He was a physician. His brother was a druggist, Tyrell H. Duncombe, but Truman Duncombe was in business with his brother, Charles Z., and they were physicians. This Truman Duncombe, his house is still at the corner of Elgin and Wellington. I think it's Campbell Cottage, or it used to be. I think that was his house.
That was his house.
Yeah.
Well, where was his office?
He was at, like about 440 Talbot Street, and they were physicians for quite a long time. Like this may have been like his bottle here. I don't know. It could have been some kind of medicine, but it's quite possibly that was some kind of like a rubbing alcohol or that. 'Cause since he's a physician, he'd have something like that.
Well, didn't a lot of the physicians made up their own drug prescriptions, didn't they?
Well, see, not really physicians. Like a druggist and a chemist, they were together. The druggists, a lot of them did. They manufactured their own like medicines for the people, and they also made another big thing was like patent medicines. So a lot of them produced their own patent medicines and sold them on the market, and made some extra money that way.
Well, then that's the oldest. Let's go back to the drugstores that we've established were in St. Thomas. Charles Rolls, you say, is the first one.
Yeah,
he's mentioned in 1832 newspaper advertisements. Where was his office? Do you know?
Sorry, it was in the corner of Walnut Street and Center.
And then the next big firm were Kent and Southwick.
Southwick, yeah, and Southwick. After that, Southwick was in business. He was a physician. You see, some of these are, they could be physicians also. And Southwick was a physician. He wasn't really a druggist, and he was in business himself for a fairly long time.
And they go back as far as 1844 or earlier.
1844. I don't know. They could.
No.
See, most of these are from newspapers, and I haven't gone through all the newspapers. These are just certain years that I've.
A lot of our newspapers don't exist anymore, too.
Right, but this is just what I've got. Like going through looking for something else, I come across it and just make a note.
Then we had the next druggist was Dr. E. Duncombe.
Yeah, that's the museum now. Elijah. That's the museum today. He built that,
and if you go to the museum, you can see his advertisement.
His sign's still there.
And that was Talbot and Pleasant Street. Then the next ones are Hugh Wade and L. Sprague. You know anything about them?
Sprague, that's 1857. He was in business later than that. He's still there in 1861, but even later than that, like 1863, 64, he's still in there. But because I know after I made this list and going through other papers again, I could come across these things. Like I found more druggists now, like that I could add to this list right now. But this was complete at the time.
Yeah. Now this was made when? 6 months ago?
This was made in November, November '79.
Well, it's quite a bit of work to line. Then the next ones we come to are Henry Morton and Charles Rich. Now, Rich was an interesting druggist here, wasn't he?
Well, Rich, at the same time that he was a druggist in St. Thomas, he also was a partner in the Elgin Brewery. That's this one right here. The Elgin Brewery, they were in business for a long time, and so he was doing two things at once. He was running a drugstore and also a partner in the brewery itself. So he had side lights, you know. He's getting involved in different things. He wasn't the only one in the Elgin Brewery, but we can get back when we start talking about the breweries. Yeah, we'll get back to him.
Well, then he was in partnership with Mitchell.
Rich and Mitchell from about, they were in business about 1872 to 74. And that, Rich and Mitchell, that's the earliest druggist we have. That's this one right here.
That's the earliest bottle.
That's the earliest St. Thomas druggist we have in our own collection of Ontario drugstores. It's the earliest one we have. So, you know, it's like this bottle, there's a lot of imperfections in it. And it's a really nice looking bottle. It's the only one I've ever heard of, and I just think about how I got this.
Well, how did you get that?
A friend of mine dug it. He collects milk bottles, and he dug it up in a farm dump. And so I had 5 milk bottles, and I traded 5 milk bottles for it. And I know after we traded, Joey and my parents, they thought I was crazy trading 5 milk bottles for, you know, something like that, you know. And then later on, when I started showing it to different people and that, and they said he was the one that was crazy. And then later on, he asked me if I'd trade back, and I didn't want to. Now that I had it, there's no way.
Well, why do you this Rich and Mitchell? Rich and Mitchell of St. Thomas. I'll let you hold that. Camera's on you. Would that be, now he was in business in 1872 and 74, and that's the earliest example of a druggist bottle in St. Thomas.
In St. Thomas, right.
Nobody else has found any earlier.
No, well, not that I know of. There may be, but not that I've heard of yet anyways.
Yeah, I would gather from reading the papers of that time that Rich and Mitchell were a sort of big operation. Didn't they have a drugstore called the Apothecary's Hall?
Well, that was C. Mitchell, Cornelius Mitchell. He died. He died in 1870. I'm not sure when he died, but when the drugstore was still run in his name after, and that was called the Apothecary's Hall.
Well, Joey, what do you do in this collecting business?
Dig.
They take you along for the labor.
He does all the reading and finds out what they're worth and that. I know a bit.
Well, maybe we better go back and find out what grade you people are in. What grade are you in, Joey?
7.
And what school?
Over at Locks.
Over at Locks?
Yeah.
And how old are you?
13.
And Stephen?
I'm 17 in grade 11 at Arthur Voden.
You're taking a 5-level course, sir?
Yeah, but I don't want to.
Well, you should take that.
That's smart.
Well, how long have you been digging?
Well, it's 8 years. Like, we started collecting, and then we sort of lost interest. We gave our stuff away to my uncle, and we started up again. So it's been about 8 years.
Well, Joey, where do you go digging, or how do you decide where you want to dig? Or you just dig at random?
Oh, I just find old dump where they burned the stuff and buried it. Then just go there with a shovel in the hole and start digging.
And hope you find something.
Go there about 8 in the morning and don't come home until about 5 or so.
Well,
awful dirty.
That'd be a pretty hard day, digging all day and sifting dirt.
You don't sift it, you just dig it and look.
Well, you have scrape away with your hand, and you have a whisk broom?
No.
No, you don't use that.
We're not like real archaeologists working away, but you know, it's similar in a way.
Well, of course it is. So what happened is that, say 100 years ago, 120 years ago, people had collected garbage just the way we do now, and very often they just put dumps in their own backyard, didn't they?
Yeah, You want to talk about cisterns?
No.
Well, okay, there's cisterns were used a lot of times to collect rainwater, and then gradually garbage was thrown into them, and they've filled up, and that's a popular place to get bottles. In other places,
Outhouses.
it doesn't sound so good as outhouses.
Yeah.
But you know, if a husband wanted to go out and catch a little drink, and you know, he didn't want his wife to find out about it, so he'd have his bottle out there, you know, finish the bottle and just drop it down, and nobody'd even know. So that's a popular place to come across bottles, is in something like that.
Yeah, well, that's not right. But generally, when did they start collecting garbage in St. Thomas? When did they send wagons around and have a sort of weekly or monthly garbage collection, or did they ever have that?
Truthfully, I don't really know when they started. I know the ravines, a lot of the ravines in St. Thomas had been filled in over the years. I don't want to really say too many places, because it's going to give, if somebody's watching the thing tonight and they find out where we dig.
Well, everybody knows that Hiawatha Street and that ravine leading off Hiawatha has been filled in.
Yeah, because that ravine there, from Hiawatha Street, that went all the way, just about City Hall was built on almost parts of it there, where the stream had began. So all through there, all underneath the Loblaws in there, in the library, that was all ravine at one time, and it's all been filled in now. See, one way we've sort of come across these things, if you look at the Elgin County Atlas, like 1877, it shows clearly that ravine has gone all the way through and back up. But if you look at, say, a map, I don't know, 1900, if there was, I don't know if there is. I know I've got maps at home, but I don't know the dates of them. And if you look at those maps, you can see that those ravines are no longer there, and so you can compare the early map to a newer map, and you can sort of plot places where dumps could be.
Now, so I want to ask you a question. Now, some of these dumps are, sometimes you see a sign with people say fill wanted. No, they usually want clean fill.
Right.
But it seems to me there are two things that, when the city did establish a dump and a garbage collection. Now, have you ever found any of those, like the regular city dump where they dump garbage?
Well, there's the city dump, the one that was down off Sunset Drive. I don't know, I don't really think there'd be anything in there, but there was the one.
Well, can I interrupt you here for a minute? What you're saying is that individual people, you know, they had a horse and buggy and they had a pile of garbage accumulate, or, you know, the mother probably said it's springtime, let's get some cleaning done, get all those empty bottles and things out of the garage. And what they did is they just went and dumped them in a ravine somewhere. Right. Like people still do that.
Back roads for that, right.
It's maddening the way they louse up back road. So they threw their bottles down the ravine, and maybe they had their chimney fixed, and the old bricks were thrown down there. And
that's right.
Because even in my house on Stanley Street across the road, that hillside, somebody has dumped a lot of fill in there.
Right.
I don't want you digging there.
Well, I've already looked along in there.
But I think any glass I found there are just all broken bits and pieces. But people did throw garbage in the ravines. So what you're looking for are old ravines, which were filled up very early. And then it's just a matter of digging in there and hoping that you'll find somebody has thrown a dozen beer bottles into a place.
See, one of the earliest that could be classed as a city dump is the Palm Street or Maple Street Hill, and at the corner there where it was used for the emergency measures, where they did the training, the old red building that they tore down about a year ago, that used to be an incinerator. So Palm Street or down the hill there, it used to be a bridge, and that's all been filled in. It's all ash and that. So down in there, they burned the garbage, and the ashes had just been dumped down there, but they wouldn't burn the bottles because you're not gonna get rid of the bottles that way. So when we were allowed to dig in there, like we're not allowed to anymore, they don't, because it's on the side of a road. But when we were allowed to, you could dig and you'd find all the bottles all in a pocket, like all together, because they would just, as going through the garbage, sort the bottles and just collect them in one bunch, and then they just dump the bottles all together. So you could dig through a lot of ash, and all at once you would find like a grouping here, not of this quality here, but a grouping of that size of bottles all at once.
Yeah, you know, they always talk about Colonel Talbot having a great appetite for liquor, eh?
Yeah.
And I've often wondered where the garbage dump was out at Malahide Farm, because he was there from 1803, and I have an idea they threw a lot of the garbage in the early days down that hill. Eh?
Right, well they still do in a way. We'll even some older stuff I found at Hawks Cliff. Down over the cliff there, I found stuff that's been of an older age that you just come to the end of the road and it just dropped over. So it's quite possible they did that along there, all the way along the lake shore.
Yeah, I suppose that'd be the logical place to throw your garbage, wouldn't it? Over a cliff top, and it's out of sight and out of mind. I remember you did dig up a beautiful brown bottle from Hawk Cliff, didn't you, that you found?
No, I didn't.
Bill Stewart.
The Stewarts from the Historical Society had found that at Hawks Cliff and given it to us. But so that's an example of an early bottle that could have been that has been found. So all along there, like if we wanted to take the time, but now that there's been a lot of erosion in that, the cliff, it's, you know, it could have been out, say, 20 feet 100 years ago, so it's going to be hard to find. It's going to be under a lot of clay now, so it's not really worth our time.
No, the thing is, if you, I know when I was on a farm out west, we used to dig a big hole, eh? And then you'd fill that hole with garbage, and, you know, tin cans and bottles and things, and then cover it up with when it was filled. And I suppose that's what happened all over St. Thomas. I know off in Roseberry, somebody was digging in the dirt floor of their garage and found a bunch of bottles there. And some of them were quite early bottles. So I suppose in St. Thomas and any of the old places, if you dig anywhere, you might find some bottles.
Yeah. But, even places you don't expect.
Yes.
In like northern parts of town, like where I live above Waterworks Park, like there was only one house there at the time, like before, like say the turn of the century, and there's a fairly large dump right behind our house, so you just have to almost the thing to look for is an old house and even a new built up area. One old house, and if you look, it's quite possible that you could find the dump and, you know, get something out of it.
Yeah. Well, now tell me something about bottles. Like if you're digging bottles, now take this one here, for instance, which you say is a prize. This says St. Thomas, Ontario.
It's Elgin Brewery.
This bottle must not be sold. What does that mean, this bottle must not be sold?
A lot of things, because like bottles, like anything else, was expensive, so it's classed as bottle piracy. Say the Rudolph and Begg Brewing Company, they were in business at the same time as in St. Thomas as the Elgin Brewery. The returns are still, like today, you get 5 cents for the bottle, you got to return then. So a lot of times they would just get a paper label and put a paper label over top of the bottle, and then, you know, nobody's going to know. So that's why it says, it's almost like a warning to the people.
Well, the thing in this one, people really put their names on the bottle to protect themselves, eh? To stop their bottles from being stolen.
Right.
And this says Elgin Brewery, St. Thomas, Ontario. This bottle must not be sold. Now, can you tell me something about that bottle, Joey? How is that bottle? Is that a handmade bottle?
Mostly.
Pardon?
No,
Mostly, like, it's blown and then the lips applied on.
In other words, the blown part of the bottle just goes up to here, right?
well, explain. Okay, about the bottle itself, the way you can tell how far the bottle has been blown is where the seam goes up the bottle, and the seam stops right at the top. So you know that part of the bottle was blown in the mold, and the top part is applied. This is what we class as an applied top bottle. It's applied by hand. They had special tools. A glob of glass is placed on top of the bottle, and special tools are used, and it's worked around until a general shape is formed. Like if you look at this, if you had another one of these bottles and you looked, you could find something different about the top, because you can't get the same made all the time.
Well, now, here's a later bottle. This is DJ Bugner, trademark registered, St. Thomas, Ontario. Now, is that a blown bottle too?
That's machine-made. You can see in 1903, a man by the name of Michael Owens, an American, he invented a bottle-making process that eliminated other people, like eliminated a lot of jobs. It produced the whole bottle all at once, the glass. Because if you look at an early blown bottle, the glass is not in uniform in shape. It may be thick in another place and wavy, but when the machine-made bottles were made, the bottle was the uniform thickness, amount of glass, the color was the same, and the tops were the same, because that's what they needed. If they were going to mass produce, say, Coca-Cola, they had to have the bottles the same, so like for tops, to put the tops on, because if they had different ones, it's going to be too much for them to do that.
Well, can I go back here to this bottle is blown into a mold, but it's blown from a glob of glass.
Yeah, a glob of glass.
And then the top is put on in a separate process.
That's right.
Now, this one, in which you can see the two
seams.
The seams there on both sides. But that has a seam too, doesn't it?
Yeah, but
it only goes to about there.
The seam only goes to the top, eh?
Or right to where the lips applied, and then the lips applied there. This one, it's all the way up the top.
That's right. It goes all the way up the top.
So it's not applied.
So that's a complete machine-made bottle.
Right.
And this would be after 1900 then.
Yeah, well, Bugner's about 1915 to 1919 in St. Thomas.
So that's something then, if you look on the top and see if it's a hand-applied special top. And
that's what we look for.
Vary, eh?
You can kind of tell if it's hand-applied because it's not always straight and it's always wavy and like big globs one place. See, like this one here, the tops goes all over the place.
And that's a hand-applied top there.
Look at how crooked it is. Even. It's not even straight, and the top just goes all.
And if also you look.
Well, now, would these all have corks in them then?
Yeah,
these hand-blown ones.
Yeah, they would all. There's some. This one right here, the one that's broken, the Colin Henderson from St. Thomas. It used a stopper called a lightning stopper. It was a porcelain stopper, or it also could have been metal, but most often it was porcelain, and it had a wire, and I don't know if you can remember the fruit jars, like the fruit jars, right? That's what I was going to say, like the fruit jars, and it had a top like that, and so it was cork or that, or also metal.
Well, did that little porcelain top have any?
It had a rubber seal around it, so just almost like the canning jars.
Yeah, and this is Colin Henderson, St. Thomas, and what's interesting about that one is that it has a railway locomotive on it, and you can certainly tell that's not a 1900 locomotive, can't you?
That's right.
Would that be a very expensive trademark to make?
Yeah, because like if you go through a lot of the trademarks, this one book here, this is written by a St. Thomas man, but a lot of the trademarks, if I can see that, they're not in that much detail. That one there from St. Thomas it's probably one of the ones with the most detail in it. It's like all the windows along the train, like the metal, you can see they've made it so it was round. They've shown the railway ties, like crooked railway ties. There's a lot of details gone into that. It would have taken a lot of time to form that plate, and it's probably one of the most. It would probably be the most expensive to do. And this bottle itself, if it was in mint condition, it has the top broken, but it's probably one of the most desirable pop bottles of this type in Ontario.
Because of the decoration.
Because of the decoration. And with this bottle also, you can look, it has a reversed N on the end of Henderson. There's two. One has a straight N, and one has a reversed N. The N is backwards.
Put it in backwards, yeah.
So there's two bottles of this two variations of the bottle. It's exactly the same. except for the end, but it makes no difference in price or...
Stephen, perhaps we should say something about Jim Hurd, who's put out 2 booklets for...
3, actually.
3, I think, for bottle collectors. This one's the Ontario Soda Water Bottle Collectors Index and Price Guide.
This is on that's on St. Thomas.
And then this is Breweries and Soda Works of St. Thomas. Are these, can you still buy these?
Yeah, Richard Cockrell. They have all the books are still available in there. That one's $2.95.
Yeah.
There's another one that's $3.95 and $4.95.
Yeah.
That one, but they're good books to have for reference. That St. Thomas one's really good to have because you can find out stuff. He's got pictures of St. Thomas bottles in there, so it's good to have. And he's written up histories of a lot of the different breweries and soda works, but they could be.
Well,
like he's done a good job, but could be more.
Well, this is the thing. Those are the first books put out,
right?
Especially with St. Thomas bottles.
Yeah, because nobody's really taken the time and the effort to do it. Like, he did it, and it's a good job what he's done. But
yeah, but the year he was so old, he had some bottles in there. He said there could be some, there could not be, and there already is some.
See, he had like variations, like possible that pint-sized bottles could turn up when a quart was only known, but now you see a lot of these bottles, pints, have turned up in different variations, so that, be something to do is try to expand what he's done and include more information in that.
Well, this is the thing, that once you put out a book on trademarks or bottles or something, it's obsolete in a way. Immediately you finish it because somebody else finds another bottle that nobody's known exists, But I do think that what we have to do is we have to do some research on some of these breweries and the soda bottling works and the druggists and find out when they started and how long they were in business and exactly where they were and what name changes they went through and that type of thing. So perhaps Stephen and Joey, you'll be the people that about 10 years from now I'll be writing the authoritative books on the soda bottling bottles of St. Thomas. Now I notice here in the list that you did prepare of druggists in 1879 and 80, you have Josiah Corliss. Now he was a doctor.
Yeah, see, he was classed. He was a physician, but he was also classed as a druggist. Yeah. So he could have been doing both. A lot of times, with the early ones, they didn't really have to go through medical college. Like, it's not as in depth as it is today, and a lot of times, they just assumed a lot of the names, assumed the title of doctor, when really they may not have been actually.
No. They had a little earlier, not in the time of the 1870s. By that time, they had licensing arrangements for doctors. You just had to be pretty careful. Josiah Corliss went to McGill. His course was 2 years. I think it was 1866 to 1868 he was there. And then his wife, who's a very interesting woman, and I'd like to know more about her, she went to medical school at Queen's in the first class for women when she was 42. And she went from 1881 to 1883 and became a doctor, and she was the first woman doctor in Western Ontario. And then they went to Australia in 1891. She was the first woman doctor in Australia, so she's a very famous person. And they were on the corner of Horton and Talbot Street. So that the point I was trying to make earlier was that sometimes doctors were druggists also,
right? And
they did make up the prescriptions themselves. Was any other druggists that are terribly interesting that you've got bottles of there?
There's some. The one that's really interesting now, this isn't really a druggist, it's a physician. It's Dr. James Fulton, and his office, on the bottle embossed, it says office opposite the Grand Central Hotel. So, like, to me now, that is a real prize to have, because, the Grand Central is gone.
Yeah.
And, it's something, it's not going to be there no more, and to see that in the glass, it's, really interesting to have.
Like 40 years from now, somebody will find one of those and you come home and say, Ma, where was the Grand Central Hotel? I know, yeah. And what other druggists have you got?
R.J. Old, He was in business. His office was at 587 Talbot.
Now, is that the small bottle marked?
Yeah, they both are. These are both R.J. Olds, 2 different sizes.
He's around 1886, 1884, 1880 you have him, eh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he was in business, and then, see, like, going through like having this list is useful because I've got the bottles here, so I have R.J. Old, and then he sold out to Riki. I can't even think of his first name right now. So he sold out to him, R.P. Riki, in 1898-99, and then it went into Lemon's F.A. Lemon and Company. I've got a little cup here that was from his drugstore. F.A. Lemon and Company. He had it. He took over in that site, and then from there it went to Lemon's drugstore. Like that was in business, Gordon Lemon. So there's a Lemon's drugstore bottle there. So it's good. I have like R.J. Old. I'm missing the Riki, but then I have Lemon and Company, and then Lemon's drugstore.
What's that?
That's Lemon's drugstore.
Now this is, but this has got the sort of white.
Yeah, it's not that old, but it's still. It's St. Thomas. Tell them how we found that one.
Well, what's the story? Where?
Out in the country, and all, like, Thorman was just sitting on top of the ground.
You just found on top of the ground.
Pretty easy.
And that was in Glenworth too. That came out. So.
Yeah.
Well, lemon juice to make a very special cough mixture. It was sold by quite a few other people, I think.
You know, that's what like I said before. A lot of them manufactured a patent medicine to maybe bring in some extra money or that, because you couldn't really survive off just being a druggist alone. A lot of them, they also sold like silverware, china glassware, seeds. So they had different things, because just to sell medicines alone to people or that, they're not going to survive. So they had to have different.
Well, that's rather interesting, because the earliest dentists, as well as, or the earliest druggists, as well as selling drugs, also sold paints and varnishes,
right?
Things like that. What's that one?
Well, it's just got a ladder in it. Kind of weird. It's got
what drug?
Peg ladder in there. It's from London. W.T. Strong.
In London. Well, who put the ladder in?
I don't know. We bought it like that.
You bought it like that. That's a machine-made bottle.
No,
it isn't. That's right.
The seed stops right there, and that was applied.
So that has to be before 1900, eh?
But it's kind of weird, because the peg ladder in there is pretty hard, probably.
I wonder how they do that.
I don't know. You got me.
Yeah. Well, any other St. Thomas?
I
want you to say something about that bottle. You don't know whose it is, do you?
No, it's a little whiskey flask, and on it says, "A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year." And it's got a lady sitting on a wine barrel. She looked, like the picture itself, like you'd figure she'd have a very long dress, but it's showing from her knees down, her legs, and she's holding a glass in her hand, like cheers. And we dug this bottle about 3 years ago, and it was full of black tar, and so I never bothered to clean it. And one night I decided I'll try to clean the bottle, and I cleaned the tar out, and it started to come out pretty good. And I put it down. My bedroom's in the basement, and I had it on a shelf in my room. And I woke up in the morning and looked at the bottle, and like it was in perfect condition the night before. And the bottle was cracked all the way around. So, like the heat, because I used hot water, and then over the cold night, the glass, it cracked the bottle. It's just a shame.
Well, now tell me about this one again. Is this pre-1900?
Yes.
It has a
applied top.
Applied top. And you've never seen one like that with a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year?
Last year, digging one site, I came across a broken one. So it must have been a popular thing.
And you think this had whiskey? Or?
Yeah, it's almost like a lot of times you get a commemorative bottle or something like that for Christmas, or so it may have just been something that was given to somebody, almost like the Avon decanters or something like that, except it wasn't like a perfume or that in it. It was like alcohol, and it was given to somebody for Christmas.
What makes you so sure that because the woman is drinking?
Yeah, she's sitting on the wine barrel, so I just
and she has a pretty modest dress. It's well over the knees, but
it's not really that much over the knees. A lot of her legs are exposed. So
that's maybe about 1890s.
It's somewhere around there. Like it's really hard to tell exactly. To date it completely, but
so you think that was a sort of commemorative bottle or a special Christmas type of bottle, eh?
And then,
well, what about this blue bottle? Can you tell us something about that, Joey? What are those blue bottles used for?
It's a poison bottle, and like it's in a coffin shape.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it says usage external and not to be taken. And it says use with caution, and it's kind of got bumps on it, so like if you feel for it, like you know it's poison. So
you know it's poison from the color.
Yeah.
The color is blue.
But if you're at night and you got no light and just feel for the bottle.
So if you were going to lift the bottle like that, you'd feel that it had that odd shape, and that's the shape of a poison bottle. Now is that an applied top on that one?
I think so. Yeah, it is. Easier way to tell is there's Owen's ring. See that ring?
Yeah.
If it's got that, it's machine made. You can tell. Oh. And this one doesn't have the machine.
I see. That ring,
that's what Steve said about the Owens, that Owens guy.
When it has a ring in the...
Yeah, like a really jaggedy ring.
That's machine made.
That's machine made.
That's how
I had a couple of old things, and I thought that meant that they were old because they had...
No, that means they're newer.
Machine made, eh?
Yeah, newer than...
Well, do they still... They don't use these bottles for poison anymore, this
no.
blue.
That's... those were made by... You could find them made by machine, and then from there it went into the square brown bottles, so the iodine bottles with the little rubber, the glass tube and the little rubber stop with the
skull and crossbones.
The little skull and crossbones on it, and then just, it's gone into an ordinary bottle because it's been like child-proof tops and that, so they don't really need the shape anymore because people understand what it is, or they're supposed to.
Well, that was pretty fair thinking, though, on that one. Now, one thing here, I see you got a glass slipper. People collect these glass slippers. Now, what's that doing with a bottle collection?
Nothing really. Oh.
Where'd you find it?
Digging down at Hiawatha Street.
Oh, don't give away the places.
Oh.
And now this is a right-hand shoe, and now you're looking for a left-hand one, eh?
Right.
See, I don't know what it was. It could have been... I was up at an auction sale one night, and they had one there, and he figured it was a pin cushion. It could have fit right in, there's the groove in the middle, so it could have been a pin cushion, that, and so...
Oh, they were used for lots of things, whole buttons, pins.
Yeah, so, we can't really tell what it was used for, but, it's something different. It's not worth throwing away or nothing like that.
No. Oh, no, that's an antique, eh? It is now. People collect those things. Well, what other interesting bottle? Here's a bottle that says T.H. Duncombe, Chemist, St. Thomas. Now, that's before 1900.
Easily.
See, that T.H. Duncombe, in 1907, he was charged with selling intoxicants to two Indians. They thought he gave them wood alcohol to use, and they drank it, and they both died. So I find different things like that.
What year was that?
I'm just trying. I think it's about 1907, 1904 or 7. I'm not positive on the exact date. Oh, here it is. We got it here. December 13th, 1905 it was, and he was charged with selling intoxicants to Indians. So it's different things like that you can come across.
Well, I suppose because a majority of the medicines in the drug business have a high alcohol content with them. They, like bay rum hair tonic, during the time when they had prohibition out west, bay rum hair tonic was about 70% alcohol. And, people used to buy a great deal of bay rum hair tonic and use it for drinking because you couldn't get.
Well, see, like in the United States, or same in Canada too, medicines. Like a lot of times, if you, like a wife, like she wouldn't like to see her husband drinking. She wouldn't like to see her husband drinking, so he would buy a patent medicine, and a lot of the patent medicines contain just as much alcohol as a bottle of whiskey, if not more. So he would buy that, and she would think he's just taking it to cure something, and end up.
I think we only have about 6 minutes left. Is that right? We should say something about the breweries here.
Well,
you have just one beer bottle here.
No, I've got two. Yeah. St. Thomas had two breweries running at the same time. First, the earliest ones were the Elgin Brewery or the St. Thomas Brewery. Elgin Brewery was located at the corner of New Street, and around where the First United Church is. And the St. Thomas Brewery, they were located in Hogs Hollow. And I've got bottles from both, or we've got bottles from both these. The Elgin Brewery, which you've seen, and the other one is William Reiser and Son. And Reiser, he ran it, and he died in 1886. And at that time, Rudolph and Begg bought the brewery. And so we've got bottles from the Rudolph and Begg Brewing Company. So they had bottles. So I've got bottles from them. And they ran that till I think about 1916. I'm not really sure about that. And then St. Thomas Pure Milk Company bought that. So I've got bottles from the St. Thomas Pure Milk Company also. So I've got bottles of the general succession of line. But like another thing about the breweries in St. Thomas, an example, say 1880, 1885, two breweries running in St. Thomas, a town not that large. And you look in London, there's two breweries there, the Carling Brewery and the Bats Brewery. So, like two small breweries in a town. London's 10 times bigger than St. Thomas, say. Two breweries in a town this size, and then London's got two breweries, and they're both big names. Yeah. And then there's breweries in Galt and Walkerville. So,
well, what happened is that everything in this country is developed into big size. So now we really have just 3 big brewing companies in all of Canada, or in all of Ontario anyway, Molson, Labatt's, and Carling. And a lot of people, think it's too bad that all the small little breweries with very special types of flavor have disappeared, but I suppose that's what people say. It's supposed to be progress to have nothing but big breweries. The same with cars, and we have 3 cars. We used to have dozens of them. And the same thing happened with implement manufacturers. We had 2 or 3 of them in St. Thomas, and they've all disappeared, and there's just 1 or 2 in Ontario. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, I have here some notes of the partnership agreements. Now, in 1878, 1st of May 1878, William Reiser Sr. and William Reiser Jr. and Charles Reiser were operating as Reiser and Son. And then they added Henry Rudolph in 1880, and it was still William Reiser and Son. Now, in 1883, Frances Reiser, a widow. Now, when did you say William died?
Maybe, I don't know, maybe I've got that wrong, but I always assumed that he had died in 1886.
Well, I'm just wondering whether...
But I know that's when Rudolph and Begg took over the brewery, so maybe that's...
No, well, maybe. You see, then Frances Reiser and William Reiser and Henry Rudolph in 1883... Then Henry Rudolph, George C. Begg, and Charles Reiser in 1883, and then in 1885, that was abolished. And Henry Rudolph, from the 16th December 1885, and George C. Begg operated under Rudolph and Begg. Up to that time was Reiser and Sons, and then they operated, I've got here, up to 1902 in their partnership agreements. I don't know just how we're fixed for time here. We have 2 minutes left. Now, Joey, are you going to continue this hobby?
For a while. Well, not a long time. a long time, I should say.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lifelong interest.
Right.
And,
Like I know a lot of people. I don't really say much to my friends about, because like if I collected coins or stamps, you know, it's different. But you talk to somebody and say you collect bottles, they think you're just, you know, you think you're nuts. So, like a lot of my friends, they don't even know I collect bottles.
No.
And, you know, because, I don't know, I shouldn't really care that, but if they did, they just, you know, start, you know, saying you're nuts and all that. But it doesn't matter. I don't care what somebody thinks.
No. Well, that's the big thing to be independent, and because as I see bottle collecting, you have to dig up so much history every time you find a bottle, and there must be hundreds of bottles that down buried around here somewhere that of firms that we don't know and where there are no examples known of them. So you always hope to find find a brand new one and find an earlier one than a Rich and Mitchell.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we just have a minute left, and Stephen and Joey, I'm very pleased that you're taking the time to come on the show and show your collection of bottles. And
well, this isn't a collection. This is
no. Well, I know. Tell me, what does your mother do? How much space do you have to keep your collection?
Well, a lot of the stuff is on shelves in the basement and that, and a lot of it is out in the garage, and others I've got buried over the hill behind our house over Waterworks Park.
You got some of it buried.
Yeah, I haven't told people where. I know places.
No. Okay, well, I think we better wind this up, and I'd like to remind the people who are watching that this program will be repeated Friday night at 8 o'clock, and a week from Friday at 8 o'clock. And Joey and Stephen, thank you very much for being on, and to everybody who's watching this. I think I'll have a program in June on, where are my papers? On Wednesday, June the 11th, I'm hoping that I will program with Art Grayling, a longtime fisherman at Port Stanley. We talk about the fishing industry in Port Stanley and the history of it. Thank you for watching, and good evening.